Welcome everyone to Monday Match Analysis. I'm Gill Gross, and it is time for a preview of the 2023 US Open, the last major of the year, my home slam. There's nothing in the world more exciting than this as far as I'm concerned. Now, because this is a major, there may be some new viewers, so let me start by explaining how we do things around here. I will go quarter by quarter. I will give you a dark horse, which is who I believe is the unseeded player most likely to make a deep run. An upset alert, which is the seeded player who I think is most likely to lose in the first couple rounds. A popcorn matchup, an early popcorn matchup, which is either a first or a second round match that you shouldn't miss for the world. I don't care what's going on. Unless there's blood or fire, you should watch it. And then I will make a quarterfinal prediction, which is, of course, who I think will make the semis. And then at the end, we'll talk about the final weekend and what might go down towards the end of the event on semifinal Friday and final Sunday. All right? I don't have much of a preamble here. Bounced back in terms of predictions in Cincinnati after a brutal Toronto. Got the champion right, got the final right, got a dark horse in the semis. So hopefully we can keep that going. I'm expecting the same conditions as we've seen recently at the US Open. It is on the quicker side, and it's not going to be too hot, it doesn't look like. The conditions should be pretty comfortable, so I don't think conditioning will be as big a deal as maybe it could be some years at the US Open when it is sweltering hot. That is not what the forecast is indicating. And yeah, that's about all I have off the top here. Let's get into this quarter by quarter. Carlos Alcaraz is the number one seed. He is joined by Jannik Sinner, Alexander Zverev, Cam Norrie, Grigor Dimitrov, Talon Griekspoor, Dan Evans, and Tomas Martin Etcheverry. My dark horse here is Thanasi Kokkinakis. My upset alert is Cam Norrie. My early popcorn is Sinner versus Hanfmann in round one. I was pretty torn here on dark horse. I considered Nishioka because he's made the fourth round at 2 slams this year. Sometimes it can be pretty exhausting to play him in a best-of-5 set match. I considered Wawrinka and Murray because of who both of those two are. I think relatively positive 2023s for both of them. Hopefully Andy's abdominal has healed. But I just wanted to target kind of the softer part of this quarter for my dark horse. If you look at the 16th under Alcaraz's section, which has Griekspoor and Norrie as the 2 seeded players, I feel like that's the area of opportunity because the bottom half of this quarter is kind of stacked. And in this softer part, I considered Shevchenko, but he had a retirement in Winston-Salem. So I ended up going with Kokkinakis. He's 25-13 on hard courts this year across all levels. He qualified for both Masters 1000s. The talent is there for him to go on a mini run. He just needs to stay healthy and stay positive. I watched and I actually called his match against Hurkacz in Cincinnati. And I thought he had a really good chance to win that match if he didn't get so negative with the chair umpire. And there was also seemingly a bit of a right pectoral issue, which I've seen pop up a few points this year. Kokkinakis has kind of favored that region, and he's had surgery on it. So I don't know what's going on there, but I think if he's healthy and he can stay in a positive headspace, he's playing really good ball at times this year. He's winning a lot of matches in general. Now, sometimes it's been qualies and not main draw or challengers, but I think Kokkinakis is kind of due for some sort of a run. He did do well at Roland Garros. He did make the third round there. Upset alert, Cam Norrie. This one isn't so complicated. Went 0-3 in the hard court swing. It seems like he just needs a reset. At some point, hopefully, he'll turn it around. I'm sure he will. But right now, he's just making mistakes that he never makes at his best. And he doesn't get all that much help with the draw. Again, Shevchenko, he's a really good young player. And as long as he's healthy. Again, retired in his Winston-Salem match, so I don't know what his status is, but that's not an easy first round. And then I have him going up against Kokkinakis in the second round or a qualifier. And a qualifier who won a first-round match, that's a guy who's on a 4-match win streak. That's never easy either. So tough draw, tough form. Cam Norrie's my upset alert. Popcorn match. Yannick Hanfmann taking on Jannik Sinner in round 1. Hanfmann has cooled off as of late. He was red hot over the course of the clay court season. And he even had a big tournament in the lead-in to Wimbledon. His record against top 20 opponents in the last year is 5-4. That is pretty astonishing for a player who has, I don't think he's ever been top 50 unless he broke into the top 50 very, very recently. So he's been really dangerous to really good players. And Sinner, he played too many long matches at the U.S. Open last year, including his first round match against Daniel Altmaier, another dangerous German player who's kind of been a little bit underranked at times, in my opinion. So this is a somewhat difficult first round for Sinner. I think it could get interesting. Obviously, Jannik should win it, but I'll have my eyes on it. Let us get to the quarterfinal prediction in Carlos Alcaraz's quarter. This is a strong quarter. It's got 3 of my 5 top power-ranked players. And ultimately, I have Carlos Alcaraz defeating Alexander Zverev. As I get to kind of my big picture thoughts in this quarter, I do want to say, big picture, I saw a lot of bad takes, in my opinion, on this quarter. I saw a lot of Carlos Alcaraz got a bad draw. I don't see it that way at all. Yes, this quarter is the most top-heavy quarter of any of them, meaning I think the best players in this quarter are the best players in any quarter. Again, 3 out of my top 5. But the only guy who got unlucky here is Jannik Sinner. Jannik Sinner is the number 6 seed, and in my opinion, he's going to have to play the 5th best player in the tournament. Again, according to form and U.S. Open history, best of 5 history, all that, right? Just taking into account. You can watch my power rankings if you didn't see that, and you can hear my logic for why Zverev came in at number 5. He's the 6th seed and is going to have to play the 5th best player in the 4th round. That's unlucky. For Carlos Alcaraz, he doesn't need to play Zverev and Sinner. He has to play Zverev or Sinner. And I actually think it's going to end up being Zverev. Obviously, that'd be ideal for Alcaraz. He's had a rough go against Jannik Sinner. I think that there are real reasons for that stylistically. But I also think that Alexander Zverev is a bad matchup for Sinner. Zverev leads the head-to-head 3-1. But this is more about my intuition about how they play versus looking at their head-to-head for evidence. It's just that Zverev absorbs pace really well. He doesn't get rushed easily. And I think you have to bring a little bit more than relentless baseline power to take on Zverev. I think he handles that very well. And sometimes we just see Jannik Sinner hit a wall against some of those really excellent pace-absorbing opponents. Again, Zverev is also just playing well. So I think that Zverev's a bad matchup for Sinner. I also think that Alcaraz is a pretty bad matchup for Zverev, which is not something that has been, in the ether, I think, because Zverev has a pretty famous victory over Alcaraz at Roland Garros last year. But to me, that was a little bit of an outlier, in my opinion. And I don't think Alcaraz was playing with a lot of consistency whatsoever at that time. Zverev doesn't take time away all that well. He's very prone to drop shots. He's prone to getting passive in big moments, which is a horrible habit against Alcaraz in particular. And Carlitos has crushed Zverev twice at Zverev's best tournament, Madrid. That is literally his favorite conditions. He said it many times in the entire calendar. There's no conditions for Zverev that are more ideal than Madrid. And Alcaraz has beaten the brakes off of him twice. So I think that Roland Garros match, as their head-to-head is going to play out, will end up being the outlier. And the last thing before I wrap things up, Sinner, it's not just the Zverev matchup. And it's not just Hanfmann, who I highlighted as a tough first round. He's got no gimmies. He really got a tough draw. I have his path as Hanfmann, Sonego. I'm a little bit unsure about his third round. Echeverry, Nishioka, Wawrinka, could be any of those guys, and then Zverev. So, look, if Sinner has an off day, an off match, I think he will pay the price for that, which is sometimes a tough position to be in. His draw just is very difficult. And Alcaraz, getting Dominic Koepfer, Lloyd Harris. I have Jordan Thompson in the third round, not Dan Evans. Kokkinakis in the fourth round, and then Zverev in the quarters. That's not a bad draw. So I think on paper people have kind of misread this for Alcaraz as well. Let's go on to Daniil Medvedev's quarter. He's the number 3 seed. Andrei Rublev, Karen Khachanov, Alex de Minaur, Hubert Hurkacz, Nicolas Jarry, Borna Coric, and Hugo Humbert join Daniil Medvedev as seeded players in this quarter. My dark horse here, I got 2 of them. It is Max Purcell and Matteo Berrettini. I absolutely love this quarter for entertainment purposes, first of all. It is a treasure trove of interesting matches. I'll talk about that when I get to the popcorn, but I'll talk about Purcell first. Max Purcell was adamant that he is not a doubles specialist. He's had a chip on his shoulder because I think he's been labeled as a doubles specialist and not really supported with wild cards. Even by Tennis Australia, like he's wanted to be, and he's kind of proven everybody wrong. He's won at least 3 matches at his last 3 events. He's had top 30 wins in each of those. He plays Chris O'Connell in the first round. O'Connell has kind of hit a rough patch, but he is a pretty good player, fellow Aussie. And then he plays Daniil Medvedev in the second round, and he's probably going to serve and volley against Medvedev, and we know that, Daniil can be bothered by that. Matteo Berrettini is also a dark horse. I was so impressed with Berrettini at Wimbledon. He hasn't really reinforced his form. In fact, I've been a little bit too high on him in the last couple of events. But I'm going to double, triple down on Berrettini, mostly because he's always better in majors, especially in the hardcourt majors. There's a big difference between how he's performed at the U.S. Open and the Australian Open, where he's got a handful of semifinals between the two of them. Whereas best of 3 on hardcourt, he's been very, very average. I favor him against Hugo Humbert in the first round. Humbert is, I believe, the 29 seed. But Hugo has some issues getting returns in play against big servers. So I think Berrettini's going to have a lot of success serving against him. And then in the third round, he could match up against Andrei Rublev. And he's played Rublev really, really well historically. Andrei can have some trouble dealing with the backhand slice, and Rublev can also have trouble dealing with the big servers. I think it's a good opportunity for Berrettini to perhaps make some noise here. And it brings me to my upset alert, which is Rublev, who got hammered with the draw. His section is stacked. Ruusuvuori in the first round, who just beat him. I thought Emil kind of went toe-to-toe with Rublev, especially on the backhand side, and actually kind of out-Rublev'd Rublev. He just overpowered him a little bit. Monfils or a qualifier in the second round. Gael has looked really good. That's a pretty difficult second round match. Berrettini in the third round. If he gets through that, Hubie in the fourth round. And Andrei Rublev comes in without form. He's on a 3-match losing streak, all with losses to players outside the top 50. Popcorn. Second round bonanza. Second round bonanza. I have my draw right here. All I'm going to do is read you all of the second round matches that I have projected in this quarter. I'm going to read you every single one. Medvedev Purcell. Nishikori Chorich, Jari Mikkelsen, that's the worst one, Lajovic de Minaur, Karen Khachanov, John Isner. Isner, this is his last tournament before he retires. Jack Draper against Hurkacz, Berrettini against Schwartzman, and Monfils versus Rublev. I mean, come on now. How good is that? That's a lot of good matches. Quarterfinal prediction. Okay, I tried to. Did I not fill? Okay, the slide. Technical difficulties. I'll have to verbal it. Quarterfinal prediction. That's really weird that happened. I could have sworn that I typed it in. Hurkacz defeats Daniil Medvedev in the quarters. That is my prediction. I will start by talking about Medvedev. A lot of tough matchups for him. We talked about that with Medvedev coming in, where it's not that I'm concerned about Daniil and the form. I think he might turn around, but there's always a thing with Medvedev where you look at certain matchups and you know that they could be troublesome matchups. This is what I'm seeing here. Purcell, third round, maybe not as much of a problem. Chorich, maybe a qualifier. Demon, Demon in the fourth round, Hubie in the quarterfinal. And what you see here in Purcell and de Minaur and Hurkacz are great net rushers who can take away his defense. Medvedev has lost his last two matches against both de Minaur and Hurkacz. So if you're Medvedev, you're hoping for, in the quarters, either Rublev or Berrettini. That would be a lot more favorable. But I think Hurkacz is going to be the guy waiting for Medvedev in the quarterfinals if Daniil gets that far. I thought about picking Hurkacz to the semis in Cincy, but the stats scared me. The stats totally scared me off. He was 2-5 in Cincinnati. He was 2-5 against Tsitsipas. So I'm like, I'm going to pick him to beat Tsitsipas in Cincinnati. That seems wrong. But I should have. I should have done it. I'm going to double down I'm not going to double down. I'm going to learn from my mistake. I'm a buyer. I'm bought into Hurkacz's form. The forehand has looked a lot better than me. He's hitting it harder. He's hitting it better. He's playing with a little bit more emotion, which has helped him. And he's been more clutch this year compared to last. Last year, he couldn't win a deciding set tiebreak. He struggled in tiebreaks in general, and that was a massive issue for Hurkacz because he's going to play a lot of tiebreaks. And this year, I feel like he's coming through those moments a lot more. He doesn't have an exceptional record in tiebreaks, but he's been good enough. And I think with the confidence, the fact that he's been pretty clutch, the fact that the forehand looks better, and he's used his athleticism pretty well on the hard courts. He's a very good mover on hard courts. I'm in on Hurkacz. I've bought into Hurkacz, and I think the draw looks pretty good for him. Karen Khachanov is his seed, and Hatchie just hasn't played in a long time. He's had injury issues, so he's returning. Who knows what kind of form he's going to be in. Could be Isner as well. Could be John. I have Berrettini in the fourth round because I have Matteo over Rublev. And then I have Medvedev. So this is a fascinating quarter. I think there's going to be so many great matches. It's my favorite quarter from an entertainment standpoint. And we'll see what happens. Oh, there we are. There's the slide. I just had to, I had to hit the button again. Hurkacz defeats Medvedev. There you go. You can screenshot it. You can share it with all your friends now because we fixed it. All right, we're halfway there, but before we go to the next quarter, I want to tell you about our partner, AG1. It's the daily foundational nutrition supplement that supports whole body health. About a month ago, I started drinking AG1 every day, and it has me feeling so much better about my health. And a lot of that is because I know that I don't always get what I need in my diet. And today is actually a pretty good example. For lunch, I made an egg salad sandwich. egg salad, 2 pieces of bread. There's no veggies. There's not a lot of nutrients there. It's delicious and it's not unhealthy. But I just know that with AG1, I'm rounding out my diet and getting all of the things in the fruits and the vegetables and the organics and the natural stuff that sometimes I'm missing in my lazier homemade meals. And it's really, really easy to drink AG1. All you do is take one of their metal scoops and it portions out the correct amount. You throw it in water and you mix it around. And I tend to drink it in the morning with my coffee, which always times out really well because that time that it takes to brew the coffee and to let it cool to drinking temperature is when I drink and ultimately finish my AG1. And again, this routine has me feeling energized and healthy in the morning. So if a comprehensive solution is what you need from your supplement routine, then try AG1 and get a free 1-year supply of vitamin D and 5 AG1 travel packs with your first purchase by going to drinkag1.com/Gill. That's drinkag1.com/Gill, Gill with 2 L's. Check it out. Number 4 seed, Holger Rune's Quarter. The all-important race to the U.S. Open number 4 seed, won by Holger Rune. If you know, you know. Top seeds are Holger Rune, Casper Ruud, Frances Tiafoe, Tommy Paul, Alejandro Davidovich Fokina, Adrian Mannarino, Alexander Sasha Bublik, and Sebastian Korda. My dark horses here are Jiri Lehečka and Martin Fucsovics. My upset alert is Sebastian Korda, and my early popcorn is Sasha Bublik versus Dominic. Did you guys hear that? That was my alarm. All right, I'm already up. All right, what was I saying? Dark horses. Jiri Lehečka. He's 35 in the world, so he just missed the cutoff. This could be one of the last majors in a while where he's not seeded because he's a young player who's on the rise. He's been great at majors this year. Australian Open quarterfinal, Wimbledon round of 16. Best of 5 has seemingly elevated him. And he's going on a run here at Winston-Salem. He's in the final there. That has not always been a good thing, but Lehečka is at least a pretty physical guy, and I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt. He's an offensive player, hits very big. If he's confident and he's not missing too much, he's going to be a problem. My other dark horse is Martin Fucsovics, who plays Quarter round 1. Always is about 10% better at majors by win percentage than he is at regular best of 3 tour events. He has been also, though, much better at the Australian Open than the U.S. Open, but that's because he's 1-4 in his career in 5 setters in New York, which feels kind of fluky to me. He's in an interesting section. His seeds are Ruud and Tiafoe. Both of them have struggled recently, and if that continues, I think you look at either Fucsovics or Mannarino. Those two are likely the ones to take advantage of that scenario. Upset alert is Sebastian Korda. His record in first matches in 2023 is 6 wins to 5 losses. He's beating himself too often, which is something I've said for a while now, but since coming back from the wrist injury, there's some matches where he doesn't have it, and he's making things easy on his opponent because he's donating a lot of bad errors. He did pick up some much-needed momentum in Winston-Salem, but then he turned his ankle and withdrew. So now that's a concern. I will say this about Sebastian Korda, and this is actually a compliment to Korda, even though I put him on upset alert here with a tough first-round draw against Martin Fucsovics especially. Casper Ruud hopes that this comes true. If you're Casper Ruud, you don't want to play Korda in the 3rd round. Because if Sebi makes it through the first 2 rounds, and if he looks good especially, now you're looking at a real chance that he can beat Casper, in my opinion. But he's still upset alert. Of all the seeded players, he's still the guy who I would kind of look to as being vulnerable in the first couple rounds. Early popcorn is Alexander Bublik versus Dominic Thiem in the first round. Can't say I'm all that confident in Thiem, who's playing his first hardcourt tennis since going 0-2 at the Sunshine Double. But Bublik hasn't won a match since Wimbledon. which was his best career run at a major. I said at Wimbledon, he has my attention. Is he turning a corner here? Is he ready to bring more focus? Is he ready to take things a little bit more seriously? Are things changing for Alexander Bublik? I don't know. We're trying to figure that out. So he's an intriguing player to me. Again, he hasn't proven it since Wimbledon. This is going to be a first-round match ultimately with a great environment, two very well-known players, nice contrasting styles, and contrasting personalities. And it's definitely one that I think will be a lot of fun to watch. Overall, this quarter is interesting. It's got 7, 8, 9, and 10 in my power rankings. It also has Gruskin's guys, who I didn't include, Davidovich Fokina and Frances Tiafoe, which basically means none of the tier 1 or tier 2 players are here. And a lot of different outcomes seem very, very plausible. The one that I am going with is Tommy Paul defeating Casper Ruud. Pretty simple reasoning here. Out of everybody in this quarter, Paul is the one who I feel the most confident in. And even if that's a relatively low bar for this quarter, I think he'll take a ton of confidence from those Alcaraz matches, even the loss in Cincy. His physicality these days really stands up well to best of 5. He's a very level-headed competitor, and as long as his forehand is firing, he has all the goods. He has the game to make deep runs at majors like he did at the Australian Open earlier this year, making the semis there. I think that Casper has a good enough draw to gain some confidence in the first couple rounds and play the best hardcourt tennis of his season in order to make the quarterfinal. Of all the guys who have kind of struggled coming in, and there have been a lot of them, you've heard me already say, I think Medvedev has a bad draw. You've heard me say I think Tsitsipas has a bad draw. You've heard me say I think Rublev has a bad draw. And all of these guys have struggled coming in. That's not the case for Ruud. And I don't really think it's the case for Rune either. So I think of all the guys who kind of needed some relief and needed to pick up some more confidence, I think in this quarter it's Ruud and Rune who have, of all of that group of players, they have been just afforded the nice stroke of good fortune, and they've gotten very, very manageable draws here. So I would look for both of them, as long as Rune is healthy, to win some matches. Another thing that I want to say, if Paul and Ruud, if my prediction comes true and that's the quarterfinal, that's another big quarterfinal in Ashe with the crowd behind Tommy Paul. And I can't help but think about how it could be similar to Tiafoe's win over Rublev last year in the quarterfinal, where you have a really, really raucous environment, a guy who's ready to embrace that and is pushed by that in Tommy Paul, someone with momentum and confidence at his back against Casper Ruud, who has a lot of stress and a lot of pressure, of course, defending finalist points, and someone whose confidence has been fragile throughout the year. I just think that could be a difficult environment for Casper to step into, and a great environment for Tommy Paul to pull off a big victory. Probably what would be the most rewarding victory of his career, similar to what Frances Tiafoe had last year at this very tournament. Yeah, that quarter, you could see a lot of different things happening. I'm excited to see how this one plays out as well. Let's finish it up on Novak Djokovic's quarter before we get to the final weekend, of course. Top seeds are Novak, Stefanos Tsitsipas, Taylor Fritz, Felix Auger-Aliassime, Lorenzo Musetti, Francisco Cerundolo, Christopher Eubanks, and Laszlo Djere. My dark horses here are Alexei Popyrin and Mackie McDonald. My upset alert is Stefanos Tsitsipas, and my early popcorn match is FAA versus Mackie in the first round. Let's start with Popyrin. He is drawn to play a qualifier in the first round. And by the way, this is the quarter where I think there are a ton of qualifiers. I think that there are 8 qualifiers in this quarter. As I always say, whenever I do these previews before qualifiers are placed, it makes me a little uneasy because I feel like they could have an effect. Not as much as little Masters 1000s where the qualifiers are a little bit higher quality, but still, it can be difficult to figure things out when it comes to that. But as I was saying, Popyrin, qualifier in the first round, then Tsitsipas or Raonic. Great combo of serve, forehand, and movement in Popyrin. That's what I like about his game. And he's coming off of 2 great events in a row. He won the title in Umag, and he made a quarterfinal in Cincinnati as a lucky loser, but he lost to Max Purcell, which is a pretty respectable loss in qualifying given how well Purcell is playing. Conditions will be pretty important for Popyrin. If it's too quick, he can get rushed. He's very susceptible to being rushed. Mackie McDonald is kind of the opposite, so I'm hedging my bets in a way here where he loves it as quick as possible. McDonald's at a career-high 39 in the world. He won 5 main draw matches between Toronto and Cincinnati. He beat Andrei Rublev in the former, and he kind of sort of beat Rune in the latter. He won the first set, and then Holger had to retire with the injury. But look, he's a confidence player, extremely offensive, can be a lot to deal with in quick conditions when he's making his forehands. Upset alert is Stefanos Tsitsipas. I look at his return to serve. It's going to be under a huge microscope in these fast U.S. Open conditions. First up will be Raonic. He's 0-2 versus Raonic, with both matches coming in 2020. He hasn't broken serve in 3 matches. His last 3 matches, he hasn't broken serve. And it's Raonic first round. I have it as Popyrin second round. And then it's probably Eubanks or Alice in the third round. I mean, there's just bomber server after bomber server after bomber server coming his way. And huge servers against Tsitsipas early in majors, particularly the hardcourt majors. Usually that has been trouble for Stefanos. So he's another one of these guys who comes in not only in bad form, but also getting a draw that presents him with the most challenging matchups stylistically possible. Early popcorn, by the way, I know I put it as FAA versus McDonald. I mean, it should probably be Raonic Tsitsipas, honestly. If I could only watch one, I think I would watch that one. But I will talk about FAA and McDonald, of course, as well. I'm intrigued in that. I think it'll probably be a close match. FAA has shown some good signs. Had a good win over Berrettini in Cincinnati. There's plenty of intrigue about his form. And McDonald, as I mentioned, is another in-form American. I think that'll be on probably Grandstand or maybe even Armstrong. And that should be a good match. All right. Quarterfinal. In Novak Djokovic's quarter, I have Djokovic defeating Lorenzo Musetti. Yes. Novak has a comforting draw. I'll start with that. He is 11-2 against Tsitsipas on a 9 match, maybe 10. I think it's 10. Yeah, 10 match winning streak against Tsitsipas. He is 7-0 against Fritz. So those are his 2 top seeds. But he did lose his last match against Musetti. And I kind of have a weird feeling that it's going to be Musetti here. There's not a lot of great evidence for it. Sometimes you have to make a pick where you're not able to really back it up with stuff that's happened in the past, but you just have a feeling that something is about to kind of turn or something good is about to happen to a player. And that's kind of my feeling with Musetti, who's had a very consistent year. He's kind of winning a match or 2 every week, just hasn't really broken through with that big run. And I just feel like it's coming for him. It's about time for him to catch a break. And the U.S. Open is so often where that happens for young players. Also, the way I have the draw playing out, the only upset he would really need to pull off and route to the quarters would be Taylor Fritz, who, yes, he's 0-2 against. Yes, he has a tendency to be overpowered by big servers and big hitters, but he can throw a lot of variety Taylor's way, make a lot of balls, make Fritz come up with shots. Taylor has all the pressure at the U.S. Open, and he's been a little bit vulnerable recently, and he's been a little bit vulnerable, or honestly a lot vulnerable, at the slams. He's got no top 20 wins since Monte Carlo. This would have to be his first top 20 win since Monte Carlo if he were to get through. So I don't see that as much of a stretch, and that's how I have Musetti getting to the quarterfinals, who would honestly probably be a more interesting match for Djokovic. I won't say than Tsitsipas, but I think versus Fritz, I think Musetti is a slightly more interesting match. Obviously, I do think Novak should be really, really pleased with this. Alexander Muller in the first round, Zapata Miralles in the second round, Laszlo Djere in the third round. I have Mackie McDonald in the fourth round, and Musetti in the quarters. It couldn't get much better for Novak. And with that, let us get to the final weekend. I'll start with the semis. I have Alcaraz defeating Hurkacz in 4. I have Djokovic defeating Paul in 4. I don't love how similar this is to Canada. Hurkacz and Tommy both had some nice runs. I mean, Hurkacz lost a little bit earlier on to Alcaraz. But yeah, Hurkacz and Paul are two players where I think both the draw played out well for them, or worked out well for them, and they're confident. They're two guys who I look at their forehands to kind of tell where they're at, and both of them have been hitting their forehands well. So I have them making these nice semifinal runs. For Hurkacz, it would be his second. For Paul, it would be his first. But we've seen Alcaraz Hurkacz a couple times, and it would be actually the third event in a row. And ultimately, Hurkacz has played Carlitos really, really well. But I think if Alcaraz can dial in his return, there's not much after that for Hurkacz. Hubie ends up being in quite a bit of trouble when Alcaraz can get enough returns in play. So I think I'll talk more about Alcaraz in a moment. But Djokovic over Paul, I put 4 sets. I don't know, maybe Tommy can make some adjustments from the Australian Open. I mean, it was very, very smooth sailing for Novak. This would be a rematch of the Australian Open semis, and it would be hard to see it going another way. I think Tommy can be a little bit underpowered from the back of the court against Novak when they match up, and Djokovic tends to do a great job of keeping him away from the net. I think Tommy would be really well suited to serve and volley next time, and maybe return and charge if this match happened. It would require some really, really drastic adjustments. All right, let's get to the final. This is a final that everybody wants, everybody is hoping for. And look, the reality is there is coming into the tournament, and anything can happen, but there is clearly a gap in the confidence and the number of questions that surround Djokovic and Alcaraz compared to everybody else, compared to your tier 2, for example, which is, Medvedev and Sinner, and I don't have either of them even getting to the semis. Let me reveal my final. I have Carlos Alcaraz defeating Novak Djokovic in 5 sets and responding to his loss in Cincinnati. Look, let me start with the devil's advocate. If you want to say, look, Djokovic suffered a heat stroke for a set and a half against Alcaraz in Cincy and still beat him, that would be accurate. That would be a very good argument. The reality of this matchup is, and how close it's been, is there's going to be a lot of really good arguments on both sides, and it's just going to be a matter of which ones do you buy into. And here are the ones that I buy into. I think the trend with Alcaraz is that he learns extremely quickly. And I think compared to Cincinnati, he will come in with better legs. He won't be as tired. Better serve, better forehand. Both of those were getting better and better, but they just weren't quite there. And, I just think he took a rest period after Wimbledon and Hopman Cup, actually. And it just took him a while to get things going. And we started to see him get there slowly. But, man, it's not going to be... I don't expect to see the same Alcaraz 2 weeks from now than what we saw 2 weeks ago in Canada. And if it were Novak, I'd say the same thing. It's just great players don't struggle generally for no reason for 5 weeks in a row. But it is typical for players to struggle, sometimes coming off of layoffs, especially after very, very physical portions of the season and big accomplishments like Alcaraz did. So not only that, I think there were some really good mental lessons that Alcaraz has learned over the past 2 weeks, particularly when it comes to focusing, and which honestly had not been great in certain matches. You think about the 5-2 lead that he blew against Hurkacz when he played him in, what was that, Cincy or Canada? They're blending in now. And the lead he blew against Novak. Really good mental lessons there. And there are tactical adjustments for him to make against Djokovic. There are things for him to look at. There are some tactics that are working. There are some tactics that are working not quite as well. And I do think that there are change-ups for him to go to. So ultimately, Carlitos wasn't patient enough or physical enough or focused enough. I just think he'll make a lot of corrections, and I'm seeing enough winning plays where I feel like if he comes in with better mental and physical fitness, that he will come through. Because when he's at his best, he is more explosive than any player in the world. It's tight. It's 5 sets. You can make good arguments for Djokovic. There's certainly a path to victory for Novak, but I see Alcaraz coming back and repeating as U.S. Open champion. All right. Content plan for the U.S. Open. First 10 days, I will be live on site in New York. In the past couple years, I haven't been able to do any content, but this year, I am going to try to just do a lot of short form stuff. Follow me on TikTok. It is Gill Gross _ I believe, on TikTok. So I will be working with my editor, Maggie, and we're going to be doing a lot of shorts and TikToks for the first 10 days. Then I'll be back breaking down the semifinals, previewing the finals, and obviously your regular post-major coverage will be coming your way. Enjoy the U.S. Open, everybody. Hope you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you next time.